Hello, YouTube. This is the next up. I am PC747. I'm your host. And in today's podcast, we're going to be talking about a lot of pixel talk. But before I dive into that, first I want to say, happy belated Veterans Day. A lot of respect for our veterans, those who have fought for our country, Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, Coast Guard. We appreciate all of you guys. I personally have a special connection with Fort Campbell. I was born there and I grew up there. So for a lot of you out there who have put your lives on the line to help preserve our freedom, yes, this is special. Thank you to you guys. Yeah, as I was getting ready for the week, man, I was just kind of preparing for the show and, going throughout the week, a lot of times after work, I'll just, look up some topics and just go through YouTube, see what's going on in the tech sphere, and got a chance to see one of the a YouTube channel. This guy actually he's been an actor, Kinimation, if you ever heard of him. He actually did some acting. I knew him from church, and I noticed he started doing some content again, or started posting some content again. He playing that Spider-Man Miles Morales, and I know he's a big Spider-Man fan. So I was on his channel, and I kind of noted, it's good to see you back up again, and just kind of, catching up. And he brought up, hey, are you going to talk about the PlayStation 5 and some of the Xbox things? As there's been some reports that some of the early PlayStation 5 and Xboxes, came out with some issues, and I'm sitting there like nobody think about talking about it, but as I started diving into, I really didn't get a chance to really dig into it, but honestly, I'm not surprised that will be a problem that, someone would get a bad PlayStation 5 or Xbox. I mean, for those of us in the phone world, this is nothing new. It's kind of indicative of being first to tech. We first be the first to buy it off the shelf. You may get a bad batch. And because you got to look with something that is so hyped, whether it be a brand new iPhone or a brand new Android device, especially something like the brand new PS5, where there's been a backlog of orders of people who just can't wait to get their hands on it. So as you can imagine, the manufacturers are in a rush to get these units on the shelves and get them off into people's hands, to make these sales. So, I wouldn't be surprised if there was a bad batch that got out there. That's just, part of the whole deal when you're first to jump onto something. You get to be first to say you got it. You get to be first to celebrate it. But, if you're one of the ones who got a bad unit, this can be even more frustrating because, with the units flying off the shelf so fast, man, trying to get your bad unit replaced sometimes can become, a problem, especially when you're in such a hurry to get to plan it, to enjoy it, and you're going through all the issues of trying to, deal with the manufacturer, trying to, reset it like they tell you to, try to, troubleshoot it, only to realize you do have a bad unit. And then you got to go through the process of getting it returned and getting another one, and, dealing with the whole shipping companies trying to get your unit. And like I said, again, you already excited for it, you're frustrated. It just adds to it. So I get it. I got to definitely look more into it, but the first couple of units, just with any of these devices, they're going to come with problems. And I'm not saying all of them will, but that's just the nature of the beast. Unfortunately, there are going to be some bad units that make it on the shelves, and you have some customers that get their hands on it. Now, if it end up being like a large portion of people who are experiencing problems, then if this is a software issue, obviously they'll kick out a software update to resolve it. But if it's a large group of people who are dealing with a hardware issue, as you can imagine, that can be a problem as well. But I don't see that being the case. I don't see this being where a large group of people are going to see it, issues with the hardware. In fact, I've been paying attention and looking around and seeing a couple people who have got their units, and I haven't really seen that big of a gripe, at least on the Twitter sphere or just around, where there's a line of people who's upset with a bad unit. And like I said, you probably do have a number of people who got their hands on a bad unit, and for those, they'll get it resolved and get it fixed. But yeah, obviously there's a lot of hype surrounding these devices. I personally would like to get my hands on a PlayStation 5, but I'm not going to be one of the people first in line. Not because of the whole QA thing. It's just a matter of, as I said in the past couple of weeks, really a month ago, after my company furloughed me or laid me off, it was just a matter of getting a new job, which I do have. And now the main focus right now is, get back to getting, the pay coming back in and rebuild my emergency fund. And that is a priority right now, getting that emergency fund bill back up before I get in there and start, throwing money away. So that's going to be very, very important to me. But let's go ahead and get into today's topic. And we're going to be talking a lot of Pixel talk. I am a big fan of the Google's Pixel. Now, even though I'm a big fan of it, I've also been very critical of Google with their hardware lately. And a lot of the moves they've been making. So, this is not going to be anything new, for those of you who've been listening to my channel. I'm probably just as hard on Google as anyone else. And a lot of times you may be like, man, are you sure you're a Google fan? Trust me, I am. I have, probably every Pixel except for the last one. I have a bunch of Chromebooks. I am a big fan of Google. I use their software. I have a Stadia and I do play it. Even though I don't play it as much. So yes, I am a Google fan. I do. You want to see them aspire to kind of do better in some ways. As far as providing better hardware on the Pixel side, I would love to see that. Definitely want to see them kind of get it right when it comes to the software. But I am a fan, and start with this first topic that I've started reading on Android Police. I came upon it, and they was talking that future Pixels may not be coming with the free unlimited cloud storage for your photos. So back in 2015, Google unveiled Google Photos, right? And Google Photos was a way to basically back up your photos and videos, and mainly was for photos, to their cloud. And it was free, especially if you had a Pixel phone. In fact, that was one of the selling points of a lot of their devices, especially their Pixels and their Chromebooks. So you get a Pixel, you get a Chromebook, you get access to a certain amount of storage. For Pixels, you had unlimited space for your photos and video, no matter what quality that you use. And as the year, they kind of backed it down, say, okay, we're not going to allow you to back up high quality photos, but we'll go ahead and at least allow you to back up your photos. And we knew it was a matter of time, personally, at least I did, that, with Google getting into this cloud service thing, man, it was going to be a matter of time before they wait and decide to say, you know what, we're going to start charging you guys for that. And I think we all was kind of waiting for it. But because we kept seeing that, we're going to have more and more of this with more Pixels offering it, we like, okay, we kind of got comfortable. I know for me, I have like 10 years of photos backed up to Google Photos. So I am all the way in with this. Now, again, when it comes to cloud service and Google Cloud Service, and it ain't just Google, because Apple doing the same thing. And they've been kind of competing on this platform of trying to get their customers in to utilize their servers or their cloud storage, trying to get you to back up everything to their cloud, whether it be your music, your movies, photos, everything. They're trying to get you to rely on them. And I don't want to say a number of people have pointed out in the past, what's going to happen when they decide to say, you know what, all right, now that you use our servers for all your vaults, now we're going to hold that hostage and start charging for it. And, if you don't pay us for it, well, we'll lock you out of it, or we'll destroy it, or we'll force you to find some other place to go. And look, we knew, those of us who were playing around with the storage, that it was a matter of time before they started charging. And then, once they started coming out with that Google One, and they started talking about that Google Drive and Google Cloud and all the other stuff, we knew they was going to get to a point where they say, all right, enough with the free stuff, start anteing up. And we're seeing that. Now, yes, you can pick up 100 gigabytes of storage for $25 a year if you want to use that to store your photos. But I can see people saying, you know what, I'm not quite want to go down that road. For one, their thought process is, if I start now, what's going to keep Google from eventually deciding to say, we're going to keep, going up with the price and continue to hold my storage hostage? And for a number of people, this is why they never really trusted the cloud. They really felt more comfortable with having their data back onto physical media where they hold on to it. Now, one of the things for those of us who are for the cloud and love the cloud is saying, okay, one of the bad things about a physical media is something happened to that physical media, right? And let's say your SD card or your storage device gets corrupted. Now all that stuff that's on there, you can't quite get it, or you see it gone. Where if you have the cloud, you still have that. And those of us who, or not those of us, but those who have been kind of saying, well, we hear you about the physical media, but look, I own my media. I don't have to worry about someone holding my media or my data hostage and charging me for it. Because this is where we at now, right? You know, if you buy a future Pixel, you buy a future Chromebook, and you utilize it just normally, you're going to use more storage as you take more pictures of where you're at and the things that you enjoy. You're going to build up more space. And how long before you get to a point where, well, every year you're paying Google a fee to hold on to your memories? And let's just say you say, okay, I'm done with paying Google a fee for holding onto my memory. I want to go somewhere else. How long before you got to pay that other person a fee, or that other company? That is some questions that we got to kind of ask, and we got to look into that. Now, you have to wonder, with Pixel phones no longer really allowing or coming with the backup storage, or I can say backup storage, but unlimited storage for your photos to Google Photos, does it make that phone lose its appeal? Because when you look at the Google Pixel, it didn't really have that big of appeal, like to the broad range of people outside of us Google fans. I mean, when you look at the device overall, you got that stock look and feel, but only a certain group care about that. And they're no longer the only ones doing it, right? You can get that through Motorola. You can get that through OnePlus. So you don't have to just rely on Google for that stock look and feel, for those who just want that clean look. And then, what competitive pricing? Well, since they became the Pixel, you could kind of argue about that competitive pricing that they have. Yes, the Pixel 5 was more competitive with the pricing, but one would argue they was forced into that because, you know, they didn't quite want to spend the money on the hardware, and people kept calling them out on it. Plus, yeah, they did benefit for this year with it being a slow economy because of the COVID situation. So it kind of gave them more of an appeal. But again, they're not the only ones doing it. You have more manufacturers understanding that and putting a phone in that economic price or in that area of competition, right? Where more, people are more willing to buy. Like you have your flagship phones. That's the phones that bring people to bring the eyes to that manufacturer. But for a number of people, outside that those that's rushing to grab the latest flagship to be the first to say I got it. For those who are going to the store and wanting something but wanting to buy smartly, they're not quite looking to grab the flagship. They're like, do you got something that's, a little bit cheaper? Apple is taking advantage of this. Samsung obviously taking advantage of this. OnePlus is taking advantage of it. So with more manufacturers doing that, you can't quite go, well, man, I'm picking up Google Pixels because of the competitive pricing, because you got other manufacturers that are in that realm and offering a better look and a better appeal. Okay, you go to the camera. Google Pixel phones have been very, very, celebrated for their cameras. Samsung's catching up. Apple's catching up. OnePlus, some would argue they're getting closer. Like, there's no longer that wide margin between Google and the others. And let's be real with it. When we come to Google phones, when we talk about the camera, they just got good with their cameras 5 years ago with the first Google Pixel. That's when they really jumped onto to really getting their camera game up there. like being tight with that camera game. And that's because they figured out the software end of it. And don't get me wrong, I'm not even sitting there trying to make it seem like they don't deserve credit. They do. Bravo. Bravo. I'm glad they really stepped up their camera game and gave us something to be excited about when it comes to Google. But again, they're not the only ones doing it. They're not that far ahead where they're leaving anyone in the dust anymore. Other companies are catching up. And when you look at the Pixel phone, and this is the argument I've made with every Pixel, when you put a Pixel phone next to the latest Samsung phone, next to the latest iPhone, and now I can throw out there next to the latest OnePlus, why would I pick up the Pixel, or why would anyone outside of a hardcore Google fan choose the Google Pixel over the others? Now I can understand for those of us Android fans saying, okay, I'm not going to quite be feeling the iPhone, so we're going to kind of push that aside. But okay, the latest Samsung phone, the latest OnePlus phone, the latest Pixel phone. If you're someone who I don't like Samsung because I prefer the stock look, okay. Between OnePlus and the Pixel, what does the Pixel have over the OnePlus outside of the camera? Because when you look at a lot of these OnePlus phones, they're bringing the hardware at a competitive pricing. So yeah, it's like with more and more things being stripped away from the Pixel phone, it's making it harder and harder to convince people that the Pixel is the phone to buy. And I get what Google is doing. It's getting to the point where more and more people over the years have taken advantage of the free storage, and they're eventually going to have to start, charging people and start reining in all this storage space and making sure they're making some money off of it, or at least recouping the cost for it. So they're going to have to pass that cost to someone eventually. I get it. And it's harder and harder the longer you go to then push someone into saying, hey, look, either you do it or you go, because, you got to find that area, right? You don't want to do it too soon, because if you do it like right before they have, let's say, even the gigabytes of storage being used. Let's just say, let's take out the gigabyte out there. Let's just say you only have less than a month worth of photos up there. All right, you're like, all right, I'll just take my photos somewhere else. Have a good day. I'm not paying, But if you have someone who's been there for years, and you throw out there, hey, it's only $2 a month to basically have 100 gigabytes of storage for your photos. Some people, I know I did it, I'm gonna be honest with you, they say, all right, I'll pay the $2 because I am using your storage space and I have 10 years worth of memorable photos there and I want to keep it. And that is a slippery slope that I know some people do not want to go down. But when you look at a Pixel phone, you compare it to the other manufacturers. If you pull off the Google Photos and you put it on the same level as the other manufacturers, you don't have that free unlimited storage space anymore on the photos end. And you don't have the hardware gains that set it apart from the others. You don't have the software gains that far ahead of everything other than getting updates first. Man, it's getting harder. And then, when you have a year like this year, or I say a build like this year, because every 2 or 3 Google builds that you get, we notice when it comes to their software, they have, I ain't gonna say a dud, but they have some issues where it's a little bit more buggier than the others. And, I would say right now, Android 11, at least for me, has been something very more buggier than the other releases. So I feel like this is the year that we're starting to see more bugs. So when you have that year, when you have a buggy software, it's like, man, does it really benefit, especially those outside of the hardcore Android fans, to jump on the latest Pixel just because they want a brand new software update, especially when, if we're going to be honest, a lot of your customers out there don't like updates, especially the big updates. Man, they hate it. I know a lot of people who, to this day, when they talk about iPhones and even Android, all of it. They're like, man, I'm the last to take an update. I want to make sure it don't mess up my buddy's phone before I put it on my phone and mess up my phone. Like, people look at updates like it's going to mess up a phone now, because people do not really care too much for it. They like for things to stay the same. They don't want to see too much change. So the appeal for brand new updates being first to the latest Google build or Google software, it's the same niche of people that care about that is appealing, or that finds the Google Pixel appealing anyway. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what Google's going to be able to do to stand out with their Pixel phones going forward. Now, talking about Pixel phones, I read this off of Android Central, that Google is possibly looking to start having their own in-house chips, very similar to Apple. And this could very well be something that benefits them. Now, based on what I'm seeing on them, it's called Whitechapel, and they're going to be teaming up with Samsung. And I'm kind of wondering if we could see this really benefit Google having their own in-house chips, right? If we're going to see a better performance than we already see. Because all the bugs aside, when it comes to performance, Pixel phones are very, very good with performance. They work. It's one of the things that people say about an iPhone. It just works. Or with Apple product, it just works. It just works. What I love about Google phones is the performance. It's just, second to none. Even though, as much as we talk about hardware, the fact that you have a Samsung phone that have a lot better hardware than your latest Google phones, especially the Pixels, performance-wise, it's like Google phones are just very smooth. It's why people who do pick up Google Pixel phones, gravitate towards that. So now that they will be basically having their own in-house chips, very similar to the iPhone, man, we could just imagine the performance gains or the performance improvements that we can see with this phone. Now, I think that has to be one of the things we have to leave for a dream. I say that because as much as I want to dream about that and get excited about that, I'm then reminded that this is Google here. This is the same Google that made the Pixel phones for the past 5 years. Pixel phones that, if I'm going to be fair about, not one Pixel phone have I've stood up and said, this is the phone that you have to buy. Like, for me to look back and think the Pixel 2 was the best Pixel. The Pixel that came out with the color issues where people are like, man, this is muted, it don't quite look as well. For people to look back and say, this is the best Pixel, the one that had the controversy about the colors, the one that brought up controversy about the pink screens or the blue tint and all that other stuff, that phone right there, that phone was Google's best Pixel. Man, that should tell you something. Because, man, when I think about Samsung, when Samsung had their issue with the Note 7, the Note 7 firebomb, as they call it, they had their issues. They went back, they fixed it, and they made better phones after that. They made better Notes after that. That wasn't their best Note. And it was their worst Note. And they continued to improve after that. That's what Samsung did. Apple, with the Apple Gate, Ben Gate, all that stuff, you can say, some will argue that may be one of the worst iPhone issues they've had, continue to improve since. But with the Google phones, we're not seeing that improvement that is something that's to be something to write home about, to be excited about, to say, this is the phone I must have. This is the phone I recommend you buy. Because I'm honestly do not have one Pixel phone that I recommend to anyone to buy. Not one. And again, I'm a big fan of Google products. But this is one of the things when it comes to Google. It's like they have so much potential, but they always half-step it. People argue about, with a lot of things they've done in their software, in their hardware. Google Music, Google Play Music, they finally got people excited about that and really used to it, and now they're stripping that away for YouTube Music, which is, nowhere near as appealing. Same can be said about other things. Google Stadia, I play Google Stadia from there, but you can clearly see it, especially now that you got the PlayStation 5 coming out and you got the new Xbox. This is not something that's going to be able to stand up to that. And it's starting to make Google even take a step backwards. When they came out boasting, we're going to, kind of take it to them and we're going to be the leader here. And now it's more like, well, you know what? We'll just be the place that you can play some games while you're watching some TV on your Chromebook or your Chrome box or Chrome TV stick or whatever. It's like they have so much potential, but they fail to live up to it. And a lot of it is self-driven. It's not like we're talking about a company who don't have the means, who don't have the finances, who don't have the ability to do more. I mean, again, it's the same company, when you think about it, who create the software for billions of Android phones, right? And they see all these manufacturers who are creating and building on their software. They have a gauntlet of ideas to be able to pull from. And yet we see the same old stuff. And because of this is why I do not see this at all being something to really write home about, unless Google really get it together. And the key word is if. And I'm not going to hold my breath to that. I'm not. Because I have already, given up hope that they will ever be able to put out a good Google Pixel phone. At least not one that can really rival what we expected when they first announced the Pixel. I mean, it's sad. Now I look back on all the Google phones I've had, and I remember, having the Nexus 6, and I remember the concerns and even the people that had issues with it being so expensive. And you had a number of us who look, I want to see more premium Google phones. I'm willing to pay for a premium Google phone. I'm okay with them getting outside the realm and getting outside the idea of just making a phone that was in a set price range. I'm willing to pay more for them to bring premium hardware. So you had at least a following of people who was willing to jump on board and couldn't wait to see it. And then when it got here, it never lived up to what it could have been. And when you see more and more manufacturers who've been able to come in the game and make it happen, OnePlus, it's like, man, it makes you wonder. Now, some would argue it's hardware when it comes to having the latest phone that important. Do you really need to have all these top-of-the-line specs when you think about flagship phones? Are there that many people who are running to the store to look for a flagship phone? In fact, is the flagship phone really the big money maker for manufacturers? And when you look at statistics, it really isn't, if we're going to be honest. The money makers for a lot of these manufacturers are your mid-tier and your closer, I can say lower end, but your mid-tier phones are making a lot of their money for them. They say the flagship bring the eyes and get the initial sales, but overall, for a longer period of times, these mid-tier phones are making them more money. So I can see Google saying, look, we're going to stay in this mid-tier level because that gives us the best chance of making more money. For the flagship level may not be, as beneficial for us. But, man, you could make it work. You could just maybe, like the other manufacturers, you have your mid-tier phone, you make more of those. Your flagship levels, you make a small amount. You have an idea of how many people are going to want your flagship phones. Because you had enough of a customer base between all your Nexus and your Pixel phones to get an idea of how many to have in store and have ready to go. And how many maybe to put out to certain carriers. Say, okay, look, we're not expecting this to be the top money maker, but this really is bringing the eyes to the stores. And you make that for those of us who want a flagship, but definitely give us the flagship specs. Because man, I can imagine what you guys can really do if you really put your minds for giving us great hardware to go with the software. Especially if you make everything in-house. You know, you got your own camera, you got your own chipset that's focused on giving us better quality photos, that's more able to be optimized with the software. Man, to me, I'm so excited on what we could see, the potential we could see with a Google phone that's really meant to be high-end, really meant to be flagship, and really meant to just blow the others out the water. They could really do something like that. And again, you don't have to make a lot of it, just enough for the people that's going to buy it. And then for those who may say, all right, look, you know, that's nice, but I don't quite need all that. You know, that's where you can bust out the standard line of pixels that you may have that's meant for the more mainstream audience. Those who just wanted to work, but they don't need the latest specs. They don't need to have the latest and greatest. Who can care less that it's how many gigs of RAM is on board and all that. They just want a good battery, a decent camera, and enough storage to just kind of allow them to do what they need to do. So yeah, I can see that being one of the things that can be more appealing or be beneficial to Google overall. And that's a matter of if they want to spend that type of money to make it work. It's kind of hard to have faith that they're going to be wanting to do that or be willing to do that. Because, man, let's be honest, they haven't shown enough of an interest in years. It's to the point now, whenever Google come out with another product or another idea, we all thinking, okay, how long before this go to the wayside? Or, how long before, Google just stop giving a care and they just move on to something else? It's like, they're excited for it now, but they got to move on. Like they have a attention deficit, right? They see something, they jump on, they're all excited about it, and then something else come up and they forget about that and they move on. And those of us who, followed them and jumped on to the latest device, latest software, latest product, all hyped up, we find ourselves getting left as the manufacturer moved on to something else and I forgot about us. We spent money for something that is not quite getting as much attention as it should have, as it could have. And every time we look back and say, yep, they got us again. And people are starting to see it. More and more people are starting to see it. And they're saying, nah, not me. I'll just step aside and I'll wait to see what happens with you guys first. We'll see how it works. Now, don't get me wrong. When it comes to the Google Stadia, there are some things which I would talk about in a later video that is very, very appealing. I enjoy Stadia. I like the fact that there's no load time. I like the fact that I can jump in and play and it's ready to go. I like the things that they have done with Google Stadia. I don't need a console. I can play on my Chromebook. I can play, on the go. I'm loving it. So Google has potential. They have a lot of potential with the things that they are creating. And I'm, for one, like to see them live up to that potential and just blow things out the water. And people keep telling us, just be patient. Take your time. Give Google time to do these things. But, when you see Google time after time drop something and do something else and forget about it, it's like being patient doesn't seem to benefit anyone, especially us Google fans. It's like you almost have to demand from Google to create it right now or to make this happen right now. Because if you don't see it right now, you may never see it. And that can be, wow, a waste of money for us yet again. But that's it, guys. That's all I have to say. I'm just definitely excited about seeing some of the Google news that came out. Definitely wanted to talk about it, especially for those of us who are Google fans and Google hardware and software fans, or even those of you who just tech fans in general, and just from the outside looking in, just have something that you want to weigh in on. I'm definitely looking forward to hear what you got to say. Post your comments below. What's your thoughts on the latest Google phones and the idea that Google may be having their own in-house hardware as far as their chipset. What are your thoughts about the fact that those of us who have Pixel phones, or the fact that you're no longer going to see unlimited storage space for future Pixel phones? Did you see it coming? And did you prepare for it? Anyway, you guys have a good day, good week, good weekend whenever you listen to this. I'm out.